You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Holt.
Folks, welcome back to the Shoe In Show. We're happy to be back in studio today. Lots of things going on in our industry. Consumer shifts and behaviors constantly changing. Products are changing. Companies are innovating. But one of the key issues that remains as we develop more products, new types of product, and innovate, and as we sell to consumers in different channels all across the world, the supply chain remains one of the most vital parts of our industry, one of the most challenging parts of our industry. And there's a lot of great partners out there, and there's a lot of great service providers out there, and there's a lot of great ports out there. See where I'm going with this, Matt?
I see where you're going, my friend.
Tell me where I'm going with this. Can you read my mind?
You're going to a beautiful spot in sunny Southern California where almost 3/4 of all footwear brought into the U.S. comes into the U.S. for American consumers. A mere 2.4 billion pairs a year. 2.4
billion pairs a year?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot of shoes, my
friend. So
friend.
that's about 2 billion through this one little area.
That's right.
Also known as the LBC.
That's right. Port of Long Beach, baby.
All right.
So in order for us to kind of dive deep into what's going on at the Port of Long Beach, we have our friend Dr. Noel Hacegaba, who is the Deputy Executive Director of Administration and Operations at the Port of Long Beach. He is a friend of the show. He's a friend of the organization.
He's a great friend.
Great friend. Noel, thank you so much for being on Shoe In Show today. We're so happy to have you on board.
Matt, Andy, I couldn't be happier to be on the show with you again. It's great to talk with you and your members.
Awesome.
So that's great. So let's get right to it. We've got some hot topics that are percolating out there right now, and then we've got some other things we want to talk to you on the sustainability side. But let's start out with the hot topics. We are in the middle of a trade war. We're not going to hold any punches when we talk about it. It is a war, and a number of goods have this additional duty being put on it, 25%. As we talk right now, there's not additional duty on footwear, but there's an expectation that, and there's a real possibility that an additional 25% could be added on to footwear coming into our borders. And so as the port thinks through these political and policy trade disruptions, Noel, what are you seeing as it relates to movement of goods in through the port? What did you see on the other lists, the lists 1, 2, and 3, as people were trying to bring product in? And what is the port doing to kind of maybe ratchet down some of the hiccups that might come with a surge in imports coming in to beat the additional tariffs?
Well, as often is the case, we feel the shocks of any policy changes up and close, right? So when you look back at June 2018, when the initial tariff increases were being proposed and discussed, we saw a run-up to cargo that was moving through ports. In fact, Q4 2018 for the Port of Long Beach was our strongest quarter ever. We saw numbers we'd never seen before in the last quarter of a calendar year. And that catapulted us to the first time we've ever handled 8 million TEU, which was great from a record standpoint. But as you know, anytime we have surges in cargo that are not anticipated or expected, it creates operational issues on the ground. So all that additional cargo in the run-up to the tariff increases in an effort to get ahead of them led to chassis shortages, increased turn times, an overstock of empty containers. The good news is that since that time, we've dug ourselves out of a hole. We've been working with our terminals, our industry partners, to ensure that next time we see a surge, we're better prepared. And I can say with confidence that even though there was a surge and we did see some impacts, they were not to any level of what you would call a major disruption. So it was manageable. Wait times did go up a little bit, but our partners stepped up, our dock workers stepped up, and we were able to handle that surge in cargo very effectively. So that was the fourth quarter of 2018. What we've seen so far this year in the first quarter of 2019 is a slower pace in cargo. So a lot of the cargo that was originally planned to come in Q1 of 2019 arrived earlier. So we have seen some softness, and we're looking very closely at what's being discussed currently between the U.S. and China as it relates to the next $300 billion in tariffs potentially that you discussed. That's what really concerns us, right? Once List 3 goes into effect, if it does, that has a potential to create more disruption and really hurt the pocketbooks of consumers in the U.S.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that you guys are prepared and you're tracking it and you're being on top of it as it relates to trying to track the intel. We're doing the same thing on behalf of our members. It's an art, not a science. And it's hard. Uncertainty is kind of driven in our supply chain right now, which is so difficult for businesses. And to lay that on top of, or to have your certainty rely on a political process that's up to 2 men on the planet to come to some kind of agreement, is really difficult to navigate. But let me ask you this, our members are very, they have long memories. They remember 2015. They remember the strike and the labor unrest. Do you envision, if there is an additional duty, particularly if it's 25% on this $300 billion in goods, this list 4, that we could see that kind of disruption to the level we saw in the spring of 2015? Or do you think it's much less than that? We want to give our members kind of a benchmark to gauge against.
2015 was painful. It was painful for us, painful for the entire supply chain. And we vowed after that experience that we would never let that happen again. So I can tell you with confidence that we will not see a 2015 repeat itself. I think what we have today is a port ecosystem that understands more broadly our role in the broader supply chain and what we need to do to roll up our sleeves and step up and ensure that regardless of what the shocks are, whether it's tariffs, whether it's a natural disaster, whatever the origins of disruption are, we're prepared to apply the labor, apply the equipment, and ensure that we're doing everything possible to move the cargo through our port. That's our goal. Operational excellence has become a tagline for us. That's our focus. It's our priority. And we understand the needs of your members and the need for you to get the product to its destination, speed of market, transit time. So we're committed to that, and I do not anticipate a repeat of 2015.
That's great to hear. I guess before we pivot on to kind of talking about sustainability and how the Port of Long Beach is differentiating itself against some of the other ports of entry in this space, let me ask you, what are like 3 or 4 things an importer should be thinking about, should be preparing for? Do you have any best practices? Are there resources through the port or through their carrier partners or through the terminal operator partners? What are some things that our members can do proactively to navigate through this uncertainty?
I would say, build in some room for change, right? Hedge your schedules to the extent that you can, build in some cushion. At the port, once a ship arrives and the container is discharged, we're doing everything we can to move that box out through the terminal as quickly as possible. But I would also say that these days, shippers are a lot more sophisticated in accessing data. What the pain points are. Where customer service and operational levels are at different terminals, different ports. I would say, take a look at those metrics and put yourself in the best position to control your own destiny, right? With regard to operational experience, metrics, and again, build in some cushion to make sure that you're ultimately successful in delivering your product.
And not to put words in your mouth, but also attend FTDC in October 2019 at Long Beach, correct?
Absolutely, Andy. And it's so funny that you mentioned that. That's exactly what I was thinking and what I was going to say next. And not to rub it in, but it is nice and sunny out here, Matt, and it's about 80 degrees. And it's beautiful. No rain. No signs of overcast weather. And
no humidity like we have here.
So. Well, if the tariffs hit.
No humidity, none whatsoever.
The storms are coming in different ways. It may not be rain. It may be a different type of pain, but the storms seem to be coming. One of the things that, we're always impressed at when we go out to Long Beach, and we've done a lot of port tours, but you guys put a lot of investment into automation and to port infrastructure and into speed, and getting the port ready for the bigger boats that are ultimately coming online more and more. So maybe just give us a quick synopsis of some of the innovative things you guys are working on and the investments you guys are making in order to take on more cargo and to kind of prepare for these kind of instances where because I personally, I don't know how you feel about it, but Matt and I have talked a lot, and we think this is the new normal where we're going to see a lot of disruption happening in trade over the next several years where, they're beyond what we've seen in the past with port strikes, but just our trade policy as a country could have these spikes where people are rushing to get things in. And as that happens, you obviously have to have the right infrastructure to take it in whenever the customers want to bring it in, correct?
Andy, you're so right. You're spot on, because what we've learned over the last 5 years is to expect the unexpected, right? Whether it's trade tensions or the escalating trade war, whether it's consolidation on the shipping line side. We've been impacted by so many different factors. Some expected, some not, and we're still, I would say, readjusting and realigning to the new reality in the shipping line space with regard to the new alliances, the larger ships. We're in a good position as a port because we made a decision 10 years ago to invest aggressively in capital and our infrastructure, and we're towards the finish line of a 10-year, $4 billion capital investment program. We're modernizing our facilities, expanding our capacity, making sure that our infrastructure is adequate and capable to handle the bigger ships and the surges in cargo. So we're very pleased with that. That's going to set us apart further from other gateways, other ports. But in addition to that, we realize that building infrastructure and making sure we're fit for the big ships is not enough. That's why we're entirely focused now on operational excellence, right? We understand your members' needs. We understand the need for speed. We understand that supply chain disruptions have the potential to bring the entire supply chain to a halt. And we want to do our part to make sure that we're not the choke point. And that's the reason why we're focused on turn times. We're focused on reducing dwell time. We're focused on ensuring that the appointment systems in place are working, they're efficient, they're available, making sure that we're leveraging technology to the extent possible so that it enables our members to know in advance when a container is arriving, make real-time decisions about when to send the trucker in and pick up the container or the load. So we're working with all of our industry partners, all in an effort to meet your needs and make sure that you're successful at the end of the day.
What about, one of the big things happening in our industry is people more and more trying to design, develop, make, and ship or have sustainability in their supply chain. So how we're trying to become more environment friendly, how to make things that might be more recyclable, less water waste, et cetera. And I know you guys are the green port. What are you guys doing at the port, and what are you seeing in supply chains that kind of focus more on environmentally friendly practices and projects that you guys are working on?
Sustainability is part of our DNA, and we're still very proud of having been the first green port, as I like to tell people, not just in the world, but in the galaxy. And we're all benefiting from the fruits of that. It's been well over 10 years since the green port policy first went into effect. We're on the third generation of that, and we've seen the results. And what we've learned is that you can be green and be successful, right? You can be green and still generate green of a different sort. And we're not afraid to continue to raise the bar, because what we've learned is that you can balance both. And from our standpoint, sustainability and efficiencies are two sides of the same coin. And what we're trying to do as we endeavor to make operations here at the Port of Long Beach more successful, more efficient, and inject visibility, reliability, and speed, is that we're trying to do that in a green and sustainable way. I'll give you an example. So about $1 billion of our $4 billion capital investment program is all devoted to rail. And we're trying to drive on-dock rail, get a container from the ship onto a train and get it out of the terminal as quickly as possible. One train is the equivalent of 750 truck trips. And if you consider how many containers we move through our port on an annual basis, that's a lot of truck trips. and it's cheaper, it's more efficient, and it's also cleaner. So that's just one example of how we're pursuing our green initiatives with a goal of enhancing efficiencies, driving efficiencies to deliver better service to your members.
So as you know, some of those things are really important. In fact, they're very important because they're in the back end on sustainability. I think what our members right now are trying to navigate what's consumer facing. What can you talk about when it comes to product? You know, Parlay for the Oceans comes to mind, the Adidas product. That's both a shoe and they have jerseys, you know, football jerseys, etc. But there's a lot going on in the back end. I think most of the carbon footprint, most of what happens is either on the waste side at production in places in China and Vietnam and Asia, as well as the movement of those goods on carriers and then the movement of the goods through the port. So, you know, what's the future look like on those projects, Noel? How does the port prioritize? Can you talk about how is that a political policy decision that the port navigates through commissioners? How does it all work to prioritize sustainability? And then what is kind of the next frontier when it comes to sustainability in the area of port operations and the movement of goods?
It's a great question. Our experience has been since we initiated the Green Port Policy, we've seen the entire port ecosystem and the entire supply chain stand up, right, and respond in kind. So where we are now in our journey as we try to enhance sustainability and continue to green our operations and spread that message across the supply chain, we're now at a point where we've been so successful in reducing emissions that we've decided to move the bar. And we made that decision very clear through a policy decision that was approved by our Harbor Commission. And where that is, Matt and Andy, is we're now at a point where we're looking at a near zero and a zero emissions future. We have a terminal that is in place today that raised the bar. It's Long Beach Container Terminal. That terminal is the most modern, sophisticated terminal operation in the U.S., and that demonstrates a terminal's ability to be efficient and be green at the same time. And so we believe that a zero emissions future is within sight. We believe that if we as an entire supply chain commit ourselves to that in a variety of different ways, like you were describing, either on the back end or front end, if we all share the same value and we strive to achieve it, then I think we can truly achieve it. And that's where we're at. We're at a point where we see a near zero emissions future in the near future, and with a vision towards a zero emissions reality.
Hey, Noel, you guys are kind of you're the nexus point for all these companies and service providers and shipping companies and train companies. So this thing called blockchain, is this thing legit? Is this, Maersk is coming out with a blockchain. Other people are talking about it. Obviously, supply chains would probably, make the most sense. We've seen a lot of talk about financial blockchains, which would be great because every time I try to transfer a wire payment, they charge me $25, even though the computer does it for me, right? Which kind of makes me mad. But anyway, but in terms of supply chain and what you guys see, is this blockchain? Is this something legit? Is this something that's going to be revolutionary?
So I'm certainly no expert when it comes to blockchain.
I see they're not, but I'm not asking you about what it is. I'm just saying from what you've heard, is this something people are pursuing?
What I know about it, and I have read extensively on it. I know people, I'm close to people that have become experts on it. I think the potential of blockchain in our space, in our industry, is very bright. What I understand from it is that it has the potential to clarify, introduce some integrity into the dissemination of information. Mm-hmm. It has the potential to better connect the different supply chain stakeholders along a seamless, connection point across the supply chain. So I think it has great potential. I think the fact that you've got the major carriers like Maersk and now MSC and CMA participating in it is going to give it further credibility. From our standpoint as a port authority, sort of sitting in the middle of the supply chain, I think the more visibility, the more seamless transfer of data available, the better for the entire supply chain. So to the extent that Bitcoin can help facilitate that and enable that, we're all for it. I think technology in general is evolving, and to the extent that we as an industry can adopt it and leverage it to aid our processes, I think we'll all benefit from it.
Yeah. Obviously, we're not there yet, but there's a lot of technologies that are trying to do that transparency. And to be honest, the old way of sending Ken Uru out with a clipboard trying to mark all the product coming into port just isn't cutting it anymore. We got to have better technology. Sorry,
Although Ken is very efficient, I must say. He's extremely efficient.
I will say that Ken took us out to the automated terminal, which is unbelievable. Yep. It's like a group of massive Roombas moving around automatically, not even with any direction or control from human controller, and it is awesome. So blockchain is really interesting, but technology that's here right now in the flesh is already taking place at your port, and it is a sight to see. It's one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen from a technology perspective.
Thanks, man. And we hear that all the time. I mean, really, if they were to charge for all the tours that they offer on a yearly basis, they generate a nice source of income. But that's the terminal I referenced earlier. That's the Long Beach Container Terminal, yep. Which, as I said, is the most automated. But here's one more thing I do want to say about technology, right? Technology in and of itself is not a solution. It only becomes a solution when it is integrated into the supply chain system. And I think that's where we have to draw the line. That's why I'm very careful about describing technologies in the context of the potential they can bring to the supply chain. Technology must be integrated into the supply chain, into the operations, in order for it to be leveraged as a tool.
So with that, speaking of leverage, one of the things I like to leverage is my wallet as I go and buy a new pair of kicks. That's and I true. Do it quite often.
Yes, you do.
And so we're going to take you down a journey, Noel, into our world famous segment, What You Got and What You Gettin'. And how this works is that we talk about what shoes we have on our feet, and then we talk about the next pair of kicks we're going to buy. And so to kick us off, I'm going to bring in Jasmine, and she is going to tell us what she's wearing and then what she's going to buy next.
Sorry. I have on my favorite Old Navy sandals. I went in there and I didn't see any new ones, so I was kind of sad because these are my favorite. And then two, I think I'm gonna buy some Jordan 1s. They have like some like pink and black ones that I am in love with and perfect for this season. So that's what I'm getting next.
Andy?
I'm not very good at this, as we all know. But
you got a new pair of shoes.
Well, yeah. But this is what's bad about it. I have a pair of Adidas Boost on that are black.
Oh, yeah.
And I recently bought a pair of
I don't think those ever come off
blue
your feet,
blue Adidas. Well, I'm trying to get a pair of Sperry's, all right? So
I know.
I gave you my pair.
Man.
Have you even worn the pair that I gave you?
I haven't. They're still in the back of my Jeep.
That shocks me. I am shocked.
I'm sure he put them on his feet, though.
Oh, yeah. He definitely tried them on at least.
Yeah, once. So, and what do you get next, Sperry's?
Hopefully. Fingers
right.
crossed. We'll go out and see where the deals are.
Nice. All right, Noel, you're up, my man. What shoes do you have on now? What do you want to get?
So I'm wearing some Calvin Klein loafers, which I love because they're very comfortable and they look like dress shoes. But I've got my eyes set on these Salvatore Ferragamo Anderson loafers.
There you go, man.
Chocolate brown, baby. That's next for me.
Strong.
You better get them now before the tariffs go up.
Well, no, that's from Italy. They're good.
Oh, they're good.
They're only 8.5%. No, that's strong, Noel. That's knowing you're a dapper guy, and I think Ferragamo. I love my Ferragamos. Although I'm not wearing them now, I'm wearing a pair. It's hot here. It's the humidity's way up. I'm wearing some Birkenstocks. But my next pair, I think, are Nike just came out. They re-released the Air Tech Challenge 2 Hot Lava, which Andre Agassi wore back in the day. Cool. And I had them when I was, I think, 13 years old. And so I want to reminisce. Now I'm in my 40s. I'm going to go back and buy them and feel old about myself and think back to the glory days. So when Andre Agassi had long hair and wouldn't play at Wimbledon and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so that was awesome.
Very cool.
I appreciate Dr. Hacegaba, Noel Hacegaba.
Yes, thank you.
You are you're always accessible. You're always available. We appreciate the conversation and support and look forward to continuing this conversation with you.
And it's always my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and look forward to speaking with you soon.
Yep. And the Port of Long Beach is always supportive of all our events and education initiatives. The FTDC we were talking about previously happens in October this year. You can go to ftra.org to learn more about that event, but it's 200 supply chain and customs professionals coming together, hearing updates from service providers and from government officials, and of course from the FTRA staff. Folks, this is Shoe and Show. Thank you so much for listening. You can find us at shoeandshow.com. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook. Please drop us a line, comment on our shows. Tell us what you want to hear. If you want to be a guest, drop us a line. We'd love to have you on. And for Jasmine, Matt, and myself, Shoe-In is out.
Shoe-In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.